Alright, now next we're supposed to move the sector shaft, which is this long piece through here, and I'm supposed to be able to just push it up from the bottom and have it pop out, because now that there's no worm gear, steering gear in there, I think this wants to turn a little bit. Let me put the pitman arm back on it. Have the pitman arm turn it a little bit. I can look inside here and I can see that if I rotate this gear a little bit inside, there you go. Oh, all these grease chunks are falling out. Then this gear will pass through the top of this housing. Okay, I caught the little bolt. I'm looking to see if there's a shim in here. I don't see it yet, but I'm going to be careful when I clean this off. And so now this is called the sector shaft. It'll just come right out. So there's the sector shaft. Alright, so while I was standing here cleaning some stuff up, these bearings right here just fell out. I think they were in here. I'm pretty sure they were, because I think that's where they go. And they just decided to fall out on their own and land on the ground. So I think they're all the way up in the back end of this guy. This is the fill plug. So I'll just take that off. All right, took a little bit of fighting to get this thing loose. It's kind of, the corners on it are kind of rounded off. I had to put a pipe wrench on it to get it off. All right, so I just want to show you these couple of things. Here's the sector shaft, right? So this is the piece that the pitman arm connects to down at that end. And in the top it has the adjusting screw. This is the adjusting screw. And you can see how the adjusting screw works. It goes into the end of this piece in a groove, and then when you can't pull up and down on it. And there's an inspection point here. The end of this screw, when it goes into this groove, if you pull up and down on it, okay, that gap between the head of that screw and the shaft can't be more than like I think it's 2/1000ths of an inch. Alright, so I clean this thing off so that you can see what's going on. This is they call it the ball nut, and it has a couple of screws that hold this retainer clip on, that hold these little ball guides. They're like U-shaped things. We'll look at those in a second. The other thing I wanted to point out, though, is that this bearing on the end of the input shaft, the balls are sort of pointing towards the steering wheel. So that's an important reference for me. And then the other thing to notice is that the ball nut, as we look at this, the ball guides, these two diagonal pieces, are pointing, since I have the input shaft to the left, these are pointing up and to the right. And I don't know if it's possible to put it on there backwards, but I always just like to make a note of those kinds of things. So we'll take these slotted screws, and I never really like slotted screws, but they're not in like, super tight like at the end of the world. And they have a little washer underneath them. Into the plastic box they go. This guy off. So now what we can do is we can take this ball guide retainer off, which is just a stamped piece of sheet metal. And there's just some more grease in here. A little grease bonus for you. And you can see that there are holes in the top of this, and you can see two balls. And what we have to do is we have to take out, I think there are 62 ball bearings inside here. And we have to take all of the balls out in order to get the ball nut off of the worm gear. So I'm going to be very careful now to not lose any of my nuts. And the way that you can, one hit the floor. So we have to find that one. Okay, so just a little safety precaution. I have put the ball nut over the box that I'm putting all of the pieces into. And I've got 7 balls in there so far. I see one there. I wanted to try and count them all as I took them out. I'm pretty sure there were 62. That's what the service manual says. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay. I'm not going to count all of these on camera, but they're all in here. So I'll dump them all out. Alright. So now once you take all the balls out, you can take the ball nut, which is this piece, off of the worm gear. I'm going to turn my attention back to the housing over here. Alright, so now I'm going to knock out that little plug on the back side with a socket that goes through the bearing that's in here and hits the plug. Like that. So there's the plug, all dirty. And now we can knock out the bearing going back this way. Okay, so now that we've got the plug out, what we want to do is we want to tap out the bearing race that's in here. So I'm going to use a socket that's just a little bit bigger than the one that I knocked out the plug with. It's going to go in here, and you can see it's going to get caught on the lip of the race, and I'm just going to tap that out with a mallet. That's all there was to it. One shot. And so there it is. You can see it comes out. And here's what it looks like. Like the closed end of this race was facing the outside of the housing. Okay, so now what's next? There are two sector shaft bearings inside this long piece of the housing. One of them's right up here at the top, and there's a seal at the end of it, and then you can see all these little needle bearings. I'll bring this up closer. Maybe hold it on an angle. There's a whole bunch of little needle bearings in here, inside a cylindrical race. Let me show you the new bearing, which actually is kind of crappy looking. It looks like this is what they look like. Okay, so it's a cylinder, and then if you look inside, it has all the needles. And this one has about half as many needles as the original one. I can see inside this original one, but this one has needles, and they're pretty much side by side. This replacement one has needles, like, spaced, at every other needle, and then there's just free space in between. And they fit on the sector shaft, and here's the sector shaft, so it fits on there. It's nice and snug, But I'm tempted to keep the old one at the end here. The other one fell apart. All the needles fell out. I got them in this cup. I don't know if I can even collect them and try and put them back in there. But anyway, what I think I want to try and do is knock out at the other end of this thing and inside of it at about this height, right about this area, is that next set of bearings, So what I want to try and do is I'm going to put a socket on an extension. I'm going to stick it down in here and hammer it out. And the crazy thing is, in order for me to get the socket to go through the first set of bearings that are still in there, it has to be smaller than the inside of the bearing. But I'm trying to use the same socket to knock out the race that the bearing is in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it in there, and then I'm going to get it back on camera. I'm going to put it in the hole. I'm going to cock it on an angle, and I'm really going to be hammering on it and pushing just like on one corner. So let's give that a whack and see what happens. Now, it's not too hard to do. And there it is. Now, One thing I want to pay attention to is how this came out, because I see something else. I see something on here that I wasn't expecting. It's not all this grease, but this thing has like a raised lip on one edge and a smooth lip on the other edge that mine doesn't. But now that I got this out, I'm tempted to see if I can get all the needles back in and then maybe push it back in, because I'm thinking I'd rather reuse these. I don't think these are in bad shape. Alright, so now I'm going to take the seal out of the end of the steering box, and I kind of already did it, and just want to show you what I did. I just stuck a screwdriver underneath it and then pried up, and it popped right out. And you can see on this seal, the outside has like this smooth surface, and then if I turn it over and kind of clean it up a little bit, this is the side that has sort of like it's a groove in here, right there. I don't know if you can really see that well, but there's a groove on this side, and the groove side went down. So the last thing that I have in the steering box proper itself is another one of those needle bearings. And I'm pretty sure that this one has to come out from the end that the seal just came out of, but I'm going to double check that. And I like these. I think I like these bearings better than the ones that I got as the replacements, because these have a lot more needles in them. So I think I might try and reuse these. The last thing I want to do is pull out. There's a bearing race right in here in the end of this adjusting screw thing. I want to pull that out, and if you try and come at it with a screwdriver from the top, you really can't get a purchase on it. You just can't do it. So what I discovered is if I take a small little screwdriver like this one, and I'm going to put it right in between where the bearing seats and the edge of the bearing, and just I actually was able to just push with my hand, and I got it to pop out. So you can see that opened up a groove in there now. And I'm trying to pry against the edge of the bearing. That's not going to work. You can't do that. I wonder now if I come in from the top, I can put it on a piece of wood and hammer it out. Coming. And that's it, it's out. So that bearing is out. So we will replace that with one of the new ones. So let me get it all cleaned up, and then come back for another video when I put everything back together. So that's it for now. Thanks for watching. Keep coming back. We'll be working on the Mustang.